Hi guys, today we're going to be talking more about food chains, and we're going to be talking about producers, consumers, and decomposers. So let's talk about those words really quickly while looking at this picture. A producer is called a producer because it produces its own food, right? It's kind of like magic. Sun shines down, anything that's a producer, any kind of plant life is able to make its own food from the sunlight. The fancy word for that is called photosynthesis. Imagine being able to make your own food just because you were exposed to sunlight. It's crazy, right? But they do. The sun shines down, the tree makes its own food and gives itself its own energy just from the sun. Good thing too, because a lot of other animals depend on that tree to survive, like we've talked about before. So the producers are the plants. The consumers eat the producers. So let's talk about really quickly this mouse, this grasshopper over here, okay? The grasshopper is a consumer because it consumes the producer, right? So the grasshopper eats leaves on the tree. And then who eats the grasshopper? The robin eats the grasshopper. So here's the robin up here. And then who eats the robin? The hawk. The hawk eats the robin. So we go tree, grasshopper, robin, hawk. Now, you might think, does the hawk need sunlight to survive? It does, because if there was no sunlight, the hawk wouldn't have a robin to eat, because the robin wouldn't have a grasshopper to eat, because the grasshopper wouldn't have the tree to eat. So even though the hawk doesn't make its own food from the sun, it still very much depends on the sun to make its food. Let's look at some other ways that this path could go. We could also have a grasshopper, which feeds the robin, or the cardinal, excuse me, which feeds the bobcat. And it can go in all different ways. So if we look here, we can look here, producers, consumers, and decomposers. Producers, all living things within an ecosystem use energy. Plants use the energy in the sunlight to make or produce their own food. Plants are called producers. A producer is a living thing that makes its own food. Types of producers: plants such as grasses, shrubs, or trees. Algae and some bacteria are also producers. Producers are important. Producers give us oxygen. When producers use sunlight to make food, they give off oxygen. So like we talked about, that magical thing that happens where they make their own food, as they're making that food, they're giving off oxygen, which is literally helping us and the other animals live. So that's called photosynthesis. It's the process by which plants, algae, and some bacteria use energy from the sunlight to make their own food. In this process, plants take in a gas called carbon dioxide, which we don't want to breathe in, and then give us back oxygen. Carbon dioxide is a gas in the air. So that is how photosynthesis works. Consumers. Animals, including people, cannot produce their own food from sunlight. A consumer is a living thing that gets energy by eating other living things. There are three main types of consumers: herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. Herbivores are consumers that only eat plants. Plants, trees, and shrubs make their own food, and herbivores get their energy from eating their producer. So let's look at examples of herbivores: mice, rabbits, deer, insects, cows, zebras, and elephants. They only eat vegetation. You're not going to see any of those animals eating any meat. The way that I always remember herbivore means vegetation is because of the word herb up here, which is like a plant. Okay. Carnivores are consumers that only eat animals. Carnivores in the ocean are sharks, walruses, seals, and octopus. Carnivores on land could be cats, foxes, lions, wolves, hawks, or eagles. So they eat all or mostly meat. Now, a lot of house cats and domesticated cats do eat cat food, which can have grains, but if they were out in the wild, they would just be eating meat. Okay, omnivores are consumers that eat both plants and animals. Pigs, bears, raccoons, and humans are omnivores, except of course if a human has a special dietary consideration. Okay, now we haven't really talked about decomposers. What is a decomposer? We know producer produces its own food. We know consumer eats the producers. What about a decomposer? A decomposer is a living thing that gets energy from breaking down wastes and dead plants and animals. So think about it this way. The forest would be just full of dead plants and animals if we didn't have decomposers. Can you imagine walking through the forest and it was just full of dead animals? It's not, because of the decomposers. Decomposers break the materials down into simpler materials. Examples of decomposers are bacteria, fungi such as mushrooms, earthworms, and termites. So things that break it down and turn it back into soil. All right, guys, so that is the lesson on producers, consumers, and decomposers. You're gonna go do an activity on that now, okay? Have a great day.